AMD stock investors got some pretty amazing news today dealing with the MI325 and how it is competitive against some of Nvidia's products. They also did receive some great news in the past few days with the acquisition of CT System completed, and we're going to take a closer look at all that in today's episode. So let's get started.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
Unfortunately, right, if we look at AMD, stock price pretty much sucks. The stock is sitting at $102.60. Me personally, I am bullish in this company, far off. Many people might not agree with this, but I believe this can easily 2x. At least 2x within the next 5 years. That is market beating returns. And I think it is possible for it to do much better, especially with a market cap of $165 billion. So the first thing I want to take a closer look at is AMD's MI325 hit a very crucial benchmark. So a quick background, right? Every chip company out there can say they have the best chip out there, that they have the best performing product out there. But the only way that you can really see the results are through benchmarks. And there is this ML Commons benchmark, which are used for a variety of different types of workloads. The two most popular workloads are this one, the ML Perf Inference, which is a benchmark that is used for inference solutions. And it happens to do with a lot of different models. You kind of get Llama models, different sizes, 70 billion, 400 billion. You have GPT models, you have Mistral models, you have image generation, and the list goes on and on. So there's an inference test. Also, outside of that, another important one is a training test, and they happen in different times. The last training one was in early January. Today we did get the results of the new inferencing benchmark. And AMD, let me just say, I am a big AMD NVIDIA shareholder, so I'm going to be doing an NVIDIA episode later on. NVIDIA completely dominated these benchmarks. Now, what's really impressive, though, is AMD showed some competitiveness in certain workloads with their MI325. So here are some of the kind of key points from this benchmark. First, they submitted their first ever ML Perf inference numbers for AMD Instinct MI325, their latest generation of Instinct GPUs that they launched in October of 2024. They supported the first ever multi-node submission using the AMD Instinct solutions in collaboration with the partner. So with these benchmarks, right, sometimes it's not directly AMD kind of producing these systems. What ends up happening is they go with a partner of some of these supercomputer developers or data center developers like Supermicro, like Asus, like Gigabyte, and Mango Boost. And those companies develop these solutions, these kind of servers, and then they kind of go through these benchmarks as a unit, right, as a partner. So first, let's look at how AMD competes in certain solutions. Now, again, I want to give all the information. This, in my opinion, is definitely bullish, and it does showcase kind of the performance that AMD is able to do, and most likely at a cheaper price. Here we can see an inference test for Llama 2 70 billion parameter, each using 8 times GPUs. NVIDIA's H200 is the gray, and the MI325 is the blue. While the AMD NVIDIA's H200 wins, this one actually doesn't do that bad. It is easily seen as a competitive player in this space. Now, we also see it for SDXL, and this is Stable Diffusion XL, which is a form of image generation. And we can see, again, NVIDIA's H200 is the winner, but AMD's MI325 is competitive. So again, AMD right now is not saying they're taking the crown. What they're saying is they are a competitive in this industry, and they should be looked as such. So right now we can see that in these selected benchmarks, they are the H200. Now, I also want to make sure that it's not a completely bullish thing, and we have to understand this. There's still much growth out there. If you kind of look at these benchmarks have various different models. Like I mentioned, you have the 3D unit, you have DLRM, you have have GPTs, you have various llamas. They only did like the llama 70 billion and the stable diffusion. There were a lot of testing and workloads that were not used by AMD's MI325 or AMD's MI300. Why? Who knows? But one thing that we do know is Nvidia actually shows results, maybe not with individual products, but with their whole catalog. They show at least every single workload out there. So it can kind of indicate that NVIDIA solutions right now is very flexible in a lot of these different models. And by AMD only selecting a few models, you might kind of want to think about it as, hey, is AMD just really showcasing the models that they want to show that they're somewhat competitive? Why didn't they want to do those other models, right? So is it software development issues? Is it just efficiency issues? What's the reason AMD only selects a handful of model? It's also important that Llama is Meta Platforms, and Meta Platforms is working really closely with AMD to develop these solutions. The great thing is some of these solutions, like Llama, are going to be big players in the future. So if you have a great partner with Meta like that, that can be a beneficial for future revenue growth. But regardless, looking at these benchmarks right here, the MI325 is competitive against NVIDIA's H200. Another caveat, again, I'm not here trying to just say NVIDIA is better, but I want the full picture to be seen. NVIDIA is now ramping up and is shipping the Blackwell platform, and versus the Blackwell platform, that these comparisons should not even be met. The B200 is actually about 3 times better than this. So there's no competition right now to the B200. But if there are companies that want to buy the H200 and maybe we're like, you know what, the H200 might be too expensive, we can go with the MI325. I believe there's a market there for that as well. Now, we also did see some other cool performance about AMD. So AMD does mention that they're getting better with software development, and that's what we would like to see, right? We want to see that ease and that restriction and those hurdles for customers to be a lot lower than previously. And the only way they can do that is by making innovations to their ROCm software. And they did mention that they delivered day zero support for Gemma 3 models. Next, we want to take a closer look at this multi-node submission. So one thing that is very hard to do is, right, you have 8 times GPUs, but once you start to put multiple nodes like these, and one node has 8 GPUs, once you start to put more nodes, so 2 nodes has 6 GPUs, in theory, you should see the same growth of efficiency. So if you put 2 times more chips, you should see 2 times more performance, right? That's theoretically what should happen. But there's a lot of issues with connectivity and other things happening around that for AMD, that hasn't necessarily been the case. NVIDIA has actually done it really well, but for AMD, it's something that, again, they are improving. And here they're showing us that improvement again. So here they have a 1 node of MI300Xs and a 4 node of MI300X. And with forms of running them in these benchmarks, you can kind of see that 4x growth. So it is showcasing that AMD solutions are also strong for kind of these scale out systems, at least for 4 nodes. Again, I wonder how big they can go and I wonder how hard it takes. But regardless, they're showing that they're getting in the right direction, which I think is pretty amazing for the stock. So overall, that was the first thing I wanted to discuss. And right off the bat, it just tells me that AMD is somewhat competitive to at least some of NVIDIA's products. And in a market that is very supply constrained, number 2 player can definitely get some space, or even number 3, right? Because we can say number 1 is NVIDIA's Blackwell. We can say number 2 is probably the H200. Number 2.5, number 3 could be AMD's MI325. Hopefully we get to see some crazy improvements with the MI350, which is expected to be released later this year. Now, another great thing coming out here for AMD is we did see kind of more growth in their server CPUs, which in my opinion is such an overlooked market and is one that's going to give them a lot of revenue, a lot of earnings, a lot of margins improvements. And they mentioned that they've teaming up with Oracle to have even more of their solutions in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Not a massive win, but these small wins in the CPUs, they've already been a partner of Oracle, but continuing to add more and more into that partnership, I think it's overall bullish. Now, the final thing that I wanted to take a closer look at is on March 31st, the CT acquisition was completed. And this to me again, I talk about Nvidia because that's my number one position. AMD, depending on the day, could be my number two position. So I think so. I am very, very bullish on AMD in the long term of things. And AMD just mentions that they, like I said, acquired that CT system, and this is going to give them a rack scale system capability. It will also accelerate the design and deployment of AMD powered AI infrastructures at scale, optimized for the cloud. AMD expects the transaction to be accretive on a non-GAAP basis by the end of 2025. Now, many people might be wondering why did they do this CT acquisition, right? And this is pretty much it. Infrastructure allowed to deployment to accelerate the deployment of AI infrastructure at scale, optimized for the cloud. So NVIDIA mentioned it that one of the things that they have right now is if you need to make a massive, massive PO of massive data centers and be able to build it up super quickly, the only real player that you can go with is NVIDIA because they have this whole supply chain. They know how to build up these systems pretty quickly. And that's something that AMD and Intel are lacking at the moment. With this acquisition, that's a way to accelerate that growth where in the future, someone can say, hey, look, we need a multi GPU cluster of AMD system. Can you do it pretty quickly? With this partnership of CT System, the answer will be yes. We will be able to build cluster level designs at rapid levels. And in the AI market, right, you can't be waiting 2 3 months for now for a design. You need to be able to go up and running and be able to run it because having these AI infrastructures running as fast as possible could mean the life and death for a lot of these AI companies. So speed is crucial and they need to accelerate that. Now, this is going to be about a 4.9 billion purchase with CT's shareholders receiving about 75% in cash and 25% in AMD stock. Regardless, though, for those that are not familiar, they are going to sell the manufacturing side of this later on. They really just want to keep the engineering side and the design side, but the manufacturing side, I'm pretty sure is going to make up a good portion of this money, and they'll be able to sell it for a few billion easily. Now, again, here we can see that AMD with this CT system, what they're really looking for is they already have CPUs. They already have GPUs. They have DPUs with Pensando. They have various networking solutions with various companies like Ultra Ethernet and UA Link. They are improving their software solutions. Now they need a way to be able to do cluster level system designs. And that's what CT System does. The final thing I want to mention is Forrest, the executive VP and kind of the main player in the data center solution business, kind of explained a little bit of what's happening with CT System at the moment. This is from a conference of December of 2024, but they mentioned that CT System prior to the acquisition couldn't really work together as one unit, but they did have strong contractual agreements that allow them to engage the CT resources on forward-looking products, and they have already done so on the 355 and on the 400 series, and quite candidly, everything beyond that. So when the contributions from the CT System resources will be seen in the 350 series systems that are about to be deployed, but you will start to see a bit more a major contribution from the CT Systems engineering team on the 400 and beyond. So the MI325 did great. I'm super excited to see the MI350, and with the CT System acquisition done, I believe the 400 will also be pretty good. Again, I'm not expecting here for AMD to take much of the market share for Nvidia, but if they can get revenue in this market, they're going from a $5 billion revenue this past year. If they can even 2x that, that would be amazing for this fiscal year. And then as things improve, this could be a massive opportunity for AMD. So while the stock price might not reflect it, while the stock is down a nice amount year to date, while the stock is down a nice amount from its 52-week high at these levels of 165 billion, I believe AMD can easily 2x within the next 5 years. And that's me being conservative. I think it actually can do a lot more. It can reach at least 500 billion in the next 5 years. And then that's that's at least a three bagger from here, right? So super excited. And let me know what you guys think about all these recent updates coming in for AMD.